Have you ever had that strange feeling of losing your sanity, but in such a gradual and subtle way that you barely notice? I'm not talking about dramatic madness, the kind we see in movies, with screaming and obviously disturbed behaviors. I'm talking about something much more insidious and dangerous, a slow and constant erosion of our ability to concentrate, our capacity to feel genuine satisfaction, our connection to reality. It's as if we're being gently pushed into a permanent state of mental confusion, but with a smile on our face and a phone in our hand. Imagine for a moment your morning routine. You wake up, and before you even get completely out of bed, you're already checking notifications on your phone. Your mind is still processing the awakening, but your fingers are already automatically sliding across the screen, consuming fragments of information that make no sense together. A photo of someone's breakfast whom you barely know, an alarming news story about a crisis on the other side of the world, a funny video of an animal doing something unusual, an advertisement for a product you didn't even know you needed. Within minutes, your brain has already processed dozens of completely disconnected stimuli, creating a mental cacophony that will remain with you for the rest of the day. This is not just a matter of modern distraction. What we are experiencing represents a fundamental transformation in how our species experiences reality and maintains its mental sanity. For millennia, human madness was something clearly defined and identifiable. When someone lost the reason, it was evident to everyone around them. The person talked to themselves, had bizarre behaviors, completely lost contact with consensual reality. Society had mechanisms, albeit imperfect, to deal with these extreme cases. But what happens when an entire society begins to experience a form of madness so normalized that it becomes practically invisible? What happens when the symptoms of mental deterioration are not only accepted, but actively encouraged and rewarded by the economic and social system? We are witnessing exactly this, the first form of collective madness in human history that comes disguised as technological progress and entertainment. To understand the magnitude of this transformation, we need to go back a few centuries in time. In pre-industrial societies, the human mind was adapted to a relatively stable and predictable environment. People lived in small communities where they personally knew most of the individuals they interacted with. The pace of life was dictated by the natural cycles of day and night, seasons, biological processes. Information arrived slowly, usually through face-to-face conversations or occasional travelers. When something important happened, the entire community found out and had time to collectively process the meaning of that event. The human mind, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, was perfectly equipped for this type of environment. Our ancestors developed the ability to maintain focused attention for long periods when necessary, to process information deeply and contextually, to form meaningful relationships with a limited number of people, to find satisfaction in simple but essential activities like preparing food, telling stories, observing nature. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and with it, the first cracks in this millennial balance. People were forced to leave their rural communities and migrate to rapidly growing cities. The pace of life intensified dramatically, work became more specialized and repetitive, but even then, there were still natural limits to mental stimulation. When the sun set, activities diminished. When someone was not physically present, there was no way to communicate instantly with that person. The amount of available information, although growing, was still physically limited by the communication means of the time. The real rupture began with the arrival of the internet, but accelerated exponentially with the proliferation of smartphones and social networks. For the first time in human history, we created an environment where mental stimulation never stops, where attention is constantly fragmented, where we are bombarded with amounts of information that exceed by thousands of times the processing capacity for which our mind evolved. And most disturbing, we did this voluntarily and even enthusiastically. Social media algorithms discovered something that psychologists took decades to understand completely: that the human mind is naturally attracted to stimuli that provoke intense emotions, especially those related to fear, anger, envy, or desire. These algorithms were not designed with the deliberate goal of harming our mental health, but rather to maximize the time we spend on platforms, which in turn maximizes advertising revenue. However, the result is the same: the creation of a digital environment that systematically exploits human psychological vulnerabilities. Consider for a moment how our brain's reward system works. During evolution, we developed a sophisticated system based on dopamine release that motivates us to seek resources essential for survival: food, shelter, reproductive partners, social status. This system was calibrated for a world where these resources were scarce and their acquisition required real and sustained effort. When our ancestors found ripe fruits or managed to hunt an animal, the brain released dopamine, creating a sensation of satisfaction and pleasure that encouraged them to repeat these behaviors. The problem is that modern digital technologies hijack this primitive reward system, offering constant and easy stimuli that trigger dopamine release without us having to make any real effort or obtain any genuine benefit. Each like, each comment, each notification activates the same neural circuits that were activated when our ancestors found valuable resources. But unlike those ancestral resources, which were naturally limited and required effort to obtain, digital stimuli are infinite and instantaneous. The result is that we develop a form of addiction that has no parallel in human history. We are not addicted to specific substances, but to artificially induced mental states of stimulation and social validation. We spend hours a day in a state of anxious expectation, constantly checking our devices for the next dose of dopamine. Our tolerance gradually increases, requiring increasingly intense stimuli to produce the same sensation of satisfaction. And when we don't have access to these stimuli, we experience something similar to withdrawal symptoms: anxiety, irritability, sense of emptiness. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this situation is that it comes disguised as normality and even social success. Unlike other addictions, which are socially stigmatized, addiction to digital technology is not only accepted, but actively celebrated. People who spend 10 hours a day looking at screens are considered connected and updated. Teenagers who have thousands of followers on social networks are seen as popular and successful. Companies that can more effectively capture human attention are admired as innovative and valuable. We have created a culture where the symptoms of mental health deterioration are reinterpreted as positive characteristics. The inability to maintain focused attention for more than a few minutes is called multitasking. The compulsive need to document and share every moment of life is seen as social and expressive. The constant anxiety caused by exposure to an infinite stream of alarming information is normalized as being informed. Growing social isolation, masked by hundreds of online friends, is considered a modern and efficient form of socialization. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this profound disconnection in your daily life? This sensation that despite being more connected than ever through technology, something essential has been lost along the way? I know it can be difficult to put into words. Many of us carry this weight in silence, believing we are the only ones to feel this particular emptiness. But you are not alone in this. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this disconnection when," and completing with your personal experience. Your comment might be exactly what another person needs to read today to feel they are not alone in their struggle. Sometimes naming what we feel is the first step to transforming it. The phenomenon we are observing is not limited to individual technology use. It is fundamentally transforming how we function as a society. Democracies around the world are experiencing unprecedented levels of political polarization, not because people suddenly and spontaneously developed more extreme opinions, but because algorithms discovered that polarizing content keeps people engaged for longer. Social movements form and dissipate with disconcerting speed, driven by waves of indignation that spread virally before any fact-checking or thoughtful reflection can occur. We are witnessing the emergence of a completely new form of collective psychosis, where millions of people can simultaneously be convinced of absurd conspiracy theories or mobilized for impulsive actions based on incomplete or distorted information. What makes this situation particularly dangerous is that, unlike the collective psychoses of the past, which were usually limited to specific communities and had relatively short duration, digital collective psychosis is global, persistent, and constantly self-renewing. The fragmentation of attention that characterizes our era is creating a society of people who are incapable of engaging deeply with complex ideas or maintaining intimate and meaningful relationships. We are becoming a kind of cognitive zombies, technically conscious, but functionally incapable of sustained critical thinking or genuine empathy. We react instantly to superficial stimuli, but lose the capacity for deep contemplation that is essential for wisdom and personal growth. This transformation is particularly evident in how we consume information, our ancestors had access to limited amounts of information, but processed this information deeply and contextually. They could spend hours discussing the implications of a single piece of news or event. Today, we are exposed to hundreds of informational fragments per day, but rarely have the time or mental disposition to adequately process any of them. The result is a chronic sensation of being informed, combined with a superficial and often distorted understanding of the events that shape our world. The crisis deepens when we consider its impact on younger generations. Children who grew up completely immersed in the digital environment show alarming levels of anxiety, depression, and attention problems. But perhaps even more worrying is the fact that many of these children can no longer imagine a different reality. For them, constant fragmentation of attention, compulsive need for online validation, and inability to tolerate moments of quiet or boredom are simply normal aspects of the human condition. We are literally reprogramming the human brain in real time, but without any clear understanding of the long-term consequences of this reprogramming. The neuroplastic changes caused by intensive use of digital technology are real and measurable. Studies show alterations in the brain structure of intensive internet users that are similar to those found in people with other types of behavioral addictions. The ability to concentrate diminishes, tolerance to frustration is reduced, and the need for constant stimulation increases. But the most subtle and perhaps most dangerous aspect of this transformation is the erosion of our capacity to experience what psychologists call flow or flow state. This state, characterized by deep concentration, loss of self-consciousness, and sensation that time stops, has always been a fundamental source of human satisfaction and growth. It is in these moments that we create our best art, make our most important discoveries, experience deeper connections with other people, find meaning and purpose in our lives. The modern digital environment makes it almost impossible to achieve these flow states. The awareness that a notification can arrive at any moment, the compulsion to constantly check updates, the fragmentation of attention between multiple simultaneous tasks, all this conspires to keep our mind in a perpetual state of superficial alert that prevents the deep immersion necessary for flow. As a result, even when we have material success or social recognition, many people experience a persistent sensation of emptiness and dissatisfaction. It is important to recognize that we are not just dealing with individual preferences or personal choices. The economic and technological forces that created this situation are systemic and powerful. The largest companies in the world now base their business models on capturing and monetizing human attention. They employ some of the brightest psychologists and neuroscientists on the planet to make their products increasingly irresistible. They invest billions of dollars in research and development aimed specifically at discovering ways to keep people engaged with their platforms for increasingly longer periods. We are essentially in a cognitive war where our attention is the disputed territory. And in this war, isolated individuals armed only with willpower and good intentions are fighting against some of the most sophisticated and well-funded organizations in human history. It is no surprise that we are losing. The situation is further complicated by the fact that many of the benefits promised by the digital revolution are real and valuable. The internet has given us access to amounts of knowledge that would be unimaginable for previous generations. It allows us to maintain contact with loved ones who are geographically distant. It facilitates the organization of social movements and mobilization of resources for important causes. It offers platforms for creative expression and entrepreneurship. It democratizes access to educational and economic opportunities. The problem is not digital technology itself, but rather the way it is being implemented and used. We are seeing a version of technology that has been optimized to maximize short-term profits, not to promote long-term human well-being. It is technology designed to be addictive, not emancipatory, technology that treats human beings as resources to be extracted, not as people to be served. We need to understand that we are at a crucial inflection point in human history. The next decades will determine whether we will be able to domesticate these powerful technologies and direct them toward purposes that truly benefit humanity, or whether we will allow them to continue eroding our capacity for thinking, connection, and well-being. This is not a technical or economic question, but a fundamentally ethical and existential question about the kind of species we want to be and the kind of future we want to create. The first stage in dealing with this crisis is developing greater awareness about what is happening. This means recognizing that many of the difficulties we are facing, whether anxiety, difficulty concentrating, sense of isolation, or chronic dissatisfaction, are not personal failures, but rather predictable symptoms of living in an environment that is not aligned with our basic psychological needs. It means understanding that our relationship with digital technology needs to be deliberate and intentional, not passive and automatic. We also need to develop new practices and habits that help us recover our capacity for focused attention and authentic connection. This may include regular periods of digital disconnection, contemplative practices like meditation, activities that require sustained concentration like deep reading or learning complex skills, and deliberate investment in face-to-face relationships. These are not perfect or complete solutions, but they are ways to create spaces of resistance within a system that would otherwise consume us completely. On a larger scale, we need to begin demanding that technology companies take responsibility for the impact of their products on mental and social health. This may mean regulations that limit some of the most predatory practices of digital product design, economic incentives for companies to prioritize well-being over engagement, and public investments in research on the long-term effects of digital technology on human cognition and behavior. Perhaps even more important is the need to reimagine our education, to prepare the next generations to navigate this new environment in a healthier and more effective way. This means teaching skills like focused attention, critical thinking, digital literacy, and emotional intelligence from early on. It means creating educational spaces that judiciously balance the use of technology with activities that promote deep cognitive and social development. But fundamentally, this crisis also offers us a unique opportunity to redefine what it means to have a good and meaningful life in the modern era. For thousands of years, human beings have found satisfaction and purpose in relatively simple activities, creating deep relationships, developing skills and knowledge, contributing to their communities, contemplating the great questions of existence. These traditional sources of meaning have not become obsolete just because we developed more sophisticated technologies. In fact, our experience with the digital revolution may be teaching us that these fundamental activities are even more important than we imagined. The sense of emptiness that many people experience, even when they have access to infinite entertainment and constant stimulation, suggests that the human mind needs something deeper than mere sensory stimulation. We need challenges that require real effort, relationships that involve vulnerability and reciprocity, work that has meaning beyond monetary compensation, moments of quiet that allow reflection and integration. The pandemic offered us a preview of what can happen when an entire society is forced to live primarily through digital interfaces. We saw dramatic increases in mental health problems, deterioration of social relationships, loss of meaning and purpose, and a general sense of disconnection from reality. But we also saw inspiring examples of people who use this period to reconnect with what really matters: family, creativity, nature, deep learning. The future does not need to be a linear extension of current trends. We have the capacity to make different choices, both individually and collectively. We can choose technologies that amplify our humanity instead of diminishing it. We can create cultures that value depth over superficiality, quality over quantity, authentic connection over artificial metrics of popularity. This will require courage to go against some of the most powerful trends of our time. It will mean accepting that not every innovation represents genuine progress. It will mean valuing some things that cannot be easily quantified or monetized. Wisdom, contemplation, deep relationships, connection with nature, sense of transcendent purpose. The irony is that by trying to free ourselves from the limitations of traditional human condition through technology, we may have created even more restrictive and destructive limitations. The search for constant stimulation and validation has made us less capable of experiencing lasting satisfaction. The attempt to connect with everyone has left us lonelier than ever. The promise of instant access to information has left us less wise and more confused. Recovering our collective mental sanity will require us to recognize these ironies and make peace with some fundamental aspects of the human condition that cannot be technologically overcome. There will always be limits to what we can know and control. We will always experience periods of boredom, loneliness, and uncertainty. We will always have to deal with mortality and existential meaning. We will always depend on close relationships and sense of community for our psychological well-being. Technology can help us deal with these universal challenges in more effective and compassionate ways. But when we try to use technology to eliminate them completely, we create even bigger problems. The solution is not to reject technology, but to learn to use it with wisdom in ways that honor and amplify our essential humanity instead of denying or undermining it. We are living through humanity's first great experiment with soft and disguised collective madness. Unlike the dramatic explosions of irrationality that marked previous periods of history, our version of collective madness comes with a smile, offers constant entertainment, and promises to keep us connected and informed. It is madness that sells itself as sanity, an addiction that presents itself as freedom, an impoverishment that disguises itself as abundance. Recognizing this situation for what it is not a matter of pessimism or nostalgia for the past. It is a matter of clarity and courage. It is the first necessary step to recover our capacity for clear thinking, authentic connection, and lasting satisfaction. It is the foundation for building technologies and cultures that truly serve long-term human interests. If these reflections have touched something you have been feeling, but perhaps have not found words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways to live amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us on this continuous journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. The road ahead will not be easy. It will require us to question many of the basic assumptions about progress, success, and happiness that our current culture takes for granted. It will require us to develop new forms of resistance against extremely powerful economic and technological forces. It will require us to recover skills and values that our civilization is rapidly losing. But it also offers the possibility of a richer, more meaningful, and more genuinely satisfying life than anything mere digital stimulation can provide. It offers the chance to reconnect with deep aspects of human experience that have remained constant through all historical transformations. The pleasure of deep contemplation, the joy of authentic connection, the satisfaction of real growth, the peace of wise acceptance. The world may be going gently mad, but our individual and collective sanity does not need to be sacrificed on the altar of misdirected technological progress. We still have choices. We can still change course. We can still create a future where technology serves humanity instead of the other way around. But only if we begin by honestly recognizing where we are and having the courage to imagine and build something different. This transformation will require us to rethink some of the most fundamental concepts that govern our civilization. Take the concept of efficiency, for example. Our culture is obsessed with doing things faster, processing more information in less time, connecting more people instantly, increasing productivity in all areas of human life. But efficiency for what? If we are efficiently destroying our capacity for attention, efficiently eroding our social connections, efficiently generating anxiety and dissatisfaction, then our efficiency has become counterproductive. We need to rediscover the value of deliberate slowness, intentional inefficiency, productive waste of time on activities that do not generate measurable economic value, but that are essential for psychological well-being and spiritual growth. This may seem heresy in a capitalist culture, but the truth is that some of the most valuable experiences of human life are inherently inefficient. Contemplating a sunset, having a deep conversation with a friend, learning an artistic skill, meditating, walking in nature without specific destination. These activities cannot be optimized or accelerated without losing their essence. They require presence, patience, and willingness to be completely in the present moment. They are natural antidotes against attention fragmentation and compulsive rush that characterize our digital era. But our society increasingly treats them as dispensable luxuries or obstacles to productivity, when they should be seen as basic necessities for mental health. The attention crisis is also intimately related to a broader crisis of meaning that permeates our civilization. For thousands of years, human beings found purpose through shared collective narratives. Religions, cultural traditions, political ideologies, extended family structures, identification with local communities. These narratives offered not only guidelines for behavior, but also a sense of place in the cosmos, an understanding of how individual life connects to something larger and more enduring. Modernity has fragmented many of these traditional narratives, and the digital revolution has accelerated this fragmentation. Now, we live in a world of personalized micro-narratives where each individual constructs their own reality from customized algorithmic feeds that reinforce their existing preferences and prejudices. This has created a form of collective solipsism where billions of people live in parallel realities that have increasingly fewer convergence points. The result is a society where it is increasingly difficult to establish shared basic facts, much less common values or goals. When each person lives in their own informational bubble, constructed by algorithms that prioritize engagement over accuracy, we lose the capacity for genuine democratic functioning. Democracy requires not only formal institutions of representation, but also a culture of rational dialogue based on shared factual premises. We are witnessing the emergence of something we can call algorithmic authoritarianism, where decisions about what we see, what we buy, who we connect with, and even how we feel are increasingly delegated to automated systems that optimize for metrics that do not necessarily align with our long-term interests. This is a type of social control much more subtle and penetrating than traditional forms of authoritarianism, because it does not require explicit force or obvious censorship. Instead, it works by subtly shaping our desires and perceptions so that our apparently free choices actually serve the interests of those who control the algorithms. The situation becomes even more complex when we consider how artificial intelligence is beginning to permeate all aspects of our digital life. The algorithms that govern our online experiences are becoming increasingly sophisticated, capable of predicting and influencing our behavior with growing precision. They can identify our emotional patterns, anticipate our desires, and present content at the optimal psychological moment to maximize our engagement, this means we are entering an era where our subjective experiences are increasingly mediated by systems that know more about our own mental patterns than we ourselves know. It is as if we were developing a form of artificial collective unconscious that influences our thoughts and emotions in ways we do not fully understand. The implications of this for individual autonomy and personal authenticity are profound and not yet fully comprehended. At the same time, it is important to recognize that not all aspects of this transformation are negative. The digital revolution has also democratized access to educational, economic, and creative opportunities in unprecedented ways. It has allowed marginalized voices to find platforms and audiences. It has facilitated the organization of social movements for important causes. It has accelerated scientific and medical innovation. It has connected people across geographical and cultural barriers. The challenge is how to preserve and amplify these genuine benefits while mitigating the damage to mental and social health. This will require nuance and sophistication in our approach. We cannot simply reject digital technology, but we also cannot passively accept its current manifestations as inevitable or optimal. An important part of the solution involves rethinking how we educate the next generations. The current educational system, developed for the industrial era, emphasizes memorization of facts and efficient completion of standardized tasks. But in an era where factual information is widely available and many routine tasks are being automated, we need different skills: deep critical thinking, genuine creativity, emotional intelligence, capacity for collaboration, ethical wisdom. More importantly, we need to teach children to cultivate and protect their capacity for focused attention. This means creating educational environments that judiciously balance the use of technology with activities that promote sustained concentration. Deep reading, reflective writing, complex problem solving, learning musical instruments, artistic practices, nature contemplation. We also need to help children develop what we can call digital wisdom, the capacity to navigate online environments in healthy and discerning ways. This includes skills like fact-checking, recognition of algorithmic manipulation, screen time management, cultivation of online relationships that are genuinely nourishing, and resistance to artificial social pressures created by digital platforms. But perhaps the most important aspect is helping children maintain connection with sources of meaning and satisfaction that are independent of digital validation. This means cultivating deep face-to-face relationships, developing competencies in physical and creative activities, finding purpose through contribution to causes greater than themselves, and learning to value moments of quiet and reflection. For adults who are already deeply immersed in the current digital environment, change is more challenging, but not impossible. It requires what we can call personal archaeology, excavating through the layers of digital conditioning to rediscover authentic aspects of oneself that may have been buried under years of constant stimulation and external validation. This may include experimenting with prolonged periods of digital disconnection, not just a few hours, but days or weeks. Many people discover that after the initial period of anxiety and restlessness, mental capacities emerge that they did not know they still possessed. The ability to concentrate deeply on a task for hours, to find entertainment in simple activities, to tolerate boredom without compulsive need for stimulation, to be fully present in face-to-face conversations. It may also involve rediscovering traditional practices that cultivate different states of consciousness: meditation, prayer, breathing exercises, contemplative practices from various spiritual traditions, not because these practices are inherently superior to modern technology, but because they develop mental capacities that are complementary to those emphasized by digital culture. Quietness instead of stimulation, depth instead of breadth, presence instead of distraction. The question is not choosing between past and future, but rather integrating the best of both. It is using technology as a tool to amplify our humanity, not as a substitute for it. It is creating a culture that values both innovation and wisdom, both global connection and local intimacy, both efficiency and contemplation. The future of human mental sanity will depend on our capacity to consciously navigate between these poles, choosing when to connect and when to disconnect, when to accelerate and when to slow down, when to seek stimulation and when to cultivate quietness. It will be a skill that requires constant practice and continuous refinement, like learning to play a musical instrument or maintaining a healthy relationship. We are only at the beginning of this great experiment with digital technology and its implications for human consciousness. The next decades will bring developments that we cannot even imagine currently: immersive virtual reality, brain-computer interfaces, even more sophisticated artificial intelligence, biological modification technologies. Each of these innovations will offer both extraordinary opportunities and significant risks. Our task is not to try to predict or control all these future developments, but rather to build the wisdom and discernment necessary to navigate whatever future emerges. This means cultivating a deep understanding of human nature, the values we want to preserve and promote, and the difference between change that represents genuine progress and change that simply represents novelty or profitability. In the end, the central question is not technical, but deeply philosophical and spiritual. What kind of human beings do we want to be? What kind of society do we want to create? What kind of future do we want to leave for the next generations? The answers to these questions will determine how we use the powerful tools we are developing and whether they will serve us or whether we will serve them. The soft madness that permeates our era is both symptom and opportunity. It is a symptom of a profound imbalance between the pace of technological change and our capacity for psychological and social adaptation. But it is also an opportunity to develop more mature and wise forms of relationship with technology and with ourselves. It is a chance to consciously integrate the best of ancient and modern worlds, creating something that is genuinely new and valuable. This integration will not happen automatically. It will require intention, effort, and courage. It will require us to question basic assumptions about progress and success. It will require us to prioritize long-term well-being over immediate gratification. It will require us to value human qualities that cannot be easily quantified or monetized. But if we can do this, if we can learn to use technology with wisdom instead of being used by it, we can create a form of civilization that is richer, more satisfying, and more genuinely progressive than anything that has ever existed. A civilization that honors both our capacity for innovation and our need for contemplation, both our global connectivity and our local intimacy, both our efficiency and our humanity.
How do you think AI will change storytelling from what it used to be?
Stories are some of the most powerful technologies in history. Whether it's the story of Jesus or whether it's the story of money, this is really the foundation of human civilization, is stories. Everything else is built on top of it. And for tens of thousands of years, the only entities on this planet that could create stories, either create new stories or elaborate and interpret old stories, were human beings. Only the human mind was capable of doing it. And now we have on this planet another entity which is capable of spreading and interpreting and ultimately creating stories. And it's only the beginning, it's nothing, it's just 10 years since the AI revolution began. We haven't seen anything yet.
Please welcome Yuval Noah Harari and Sir Stephen Fry.
Goodness me, I wasn't sure anyone would turn up. Isn't this rather exciting? Well, it's a great thrill for me to be with this hero of mine, really, Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure many of you will have read the book that catapulted his name into world fame, Sapiens, a remarkable history of our species, which involved many, many extraordinary insights and a kind of thrilling narrative of its own. But one of the things, Yuval, that I think many of us were impressed by was the way you showed that perhaps Sapiens was almost the wrong title. It wasn't that we were the wise humanity, but that we were storytelling humanity. That what separated us from the Neanderthals and from other primates and set us on our course was the fact that we told stories about ourselves and about the world as we apprehended it. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And would you say that this is both what gets us into trouble, because a story is also another word for a lie, and also what propels us into a stable future?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword in this regard, which becomes particularly important in the age of AI, because for the first time in history, we encounter a better storyteller than we are. We took over the planet not because we are more intelligent than the other animals, but because we can cooperate better. And we cooperate through storytelling. And you have the obvious examples like religions, but my favorite example is money, which is probably the greatest story ever invented, ever told, because it's the only one everybody believes, or almost everybody. I mean, humans. No other animal on the planet knows that money even exists, because it only exists in our imagination. But now there is another thing on the planet that knows that money exists, and that can maybe invent new kinds of money and new kinds of other stories. And what will happen to us when we have to deal, it's not just with one better storyteller, but with billions of better storytellers than us on this planet? That's, I think, one of the biggest questions of our age.
Yes, and you're talking, of course, about AI, and it's recently come to light that one of the large language model corporations, Anthropic, has revealed that its latest instance of Claude was, in a closed test, was seen to blackmail some people in order to achieve a goal. And when we think about AI, we either get very dismissive of it. It's merely a parrot repeating probable instances of human communication, a stochastic parrot, as Emily Bender, the computational linguist, famously called it. It's every time it gives you a sentence, no matter how intelligent it appears, it is merely following a probabilistic route.
The question is it not the same with us?
Yeah, exactly.
When I look at the way sentences are formed in my own mind, like now when I'm talking with you, I don't know how the sentence will end. Yeah. I start saying something, and the words just keep bubbling up in the mind. And as a public speaker, it's something terrifying because I don't know if I will be able to complete the sentence. I'm not sure what will be the next word.
That's right. You're talking and you're trying to make sense, and suddenly you've come up with lettuce. Where did that happen? It's an unrolling carpet. Syntagmatic, I think, is the technical word for it.
And the amazing thing with AI, you can now ask the AI to show you exactly how it thinks. You can actually watch how the logic unfolds in the AI in a way which is very difficult for us to do with our own minds. But we can now do, the AIs don't have minds, at least as far as we know, but we can see how the sentences, the stories are being formed in their, whatever we call it.
If we ask them to, but the fact is I've spoken to people like Jeffrey Hinton and people who are called the godfather of AI, and they would say that the most disturbing fact about these current models is that nobody knows what's going on under the hood. They don't actually know how it's doing what it's doing.
If we could know everything that's going on there and predict it, it wouldn't be AI.
That's the point. Exactly.
If you have something that you can predict how it will behave, what decisions it will make, what ideas it will invent, by definition, this is not AI. This is just an automatic machine.
The way to make that clearer, perhaps, is to recognize that AI now can beat, just on your phone, any chess player in the world. And you obviously can't predict the moves it's going to make, because if you could predict the moves it was going to make, you would beat it, or it would be a stalemate every time. And you expand that to the whole of AI. You don't know what it's going to say or do, which is why it's a useful tool. If it could only match what we did, it would be not a tool. It would be like saying that a digger, a JCB, could only dig as much as a human with a spade. The point is we have these machines to outmatch what we can do, yeah?
I think that's the main point. Both the main premise of AI is to be better than us at decision-making in many fields, that it would be able to invent things that we cannot think about, but that is also the main threat.
Yeah.
That we cannot predict how it will behave, and we cannot control it in advance. No matter how much we try to make it safe, to align it with our aims, with our goals, I think it really goes to the heart of what AI is.
Yes.
That usually we think about AI as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it's no longer artificial. Yeah. If you think about what an artifact is something that we create and we control. Yep. With each passing day, AI is becoming less and less artificial, which is why I prefer to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence. Yeah. It is, even the word in a way a true intelligence is never an artifact. Because an artifact is something that you create and control, whereas intelligence is characterized by the ability to create new things.
Yeah. You used a verb there very quickly, but it's worth expanding on it, and that was align. And for those of us who are concerned, shall we say, about how AI is going, one of the main problems is what is known as the alignment problem. There's a simple way of looking at it, which is an old philosophical thought experiment called the genie. So if you imagine a genie who gives you a wish, and you love life and you're an empathetic person, so you say to the genie, can you really bring any wish true? And they say, yes. You say, in that case, could you end all suffering? And instantly, all life on the planet is extinguished. Because to the genie, they look at the world, and all suffering comes in form of life. All forms of life suffer. Smallest animals and us. That's the only place where suffering exists. Stones, as far as the genie is concerned, don't suffer. Maybe trees do, it's not sure, but if it gets rid of all life, it has solved our problem, and it bows and says, there you are, master. Now, that's a very broad sense of the alignment problem. We asked a very stupid question. We didn't think it through. But the fact is, yes, we have to understand AI and alien, but we really have to understand ourselves in order, because we don't have shared ethical frameworks around the world. How do you encode dignity, love, sympathy, passion, joy, equality? We've only just learned, if you like, recently that women's and men's lives and dignities are equal and that people of different races are equal. We've only just discovered this. And there are many other things we aren't sure about. And how, therefore, can we expect the machines to be sure? And therefore, we ask them a question, and it might do an equivalent of what the genie does. How do you see a solution to that?
Well, one of the other key things about AI, because it can learn and change by itself, so whatever we teach it, we cannot be certain that it will always just comply by our instructions. Again, if it only does what we tell it to do, it's not really an AI. So when we think about the alignment problem, or how to educate AI to be benevolent and not harmful, it's a very problematic and imperfect analogy, but I think it's still useful to think about AI as a child, as the child of humanity. And what we know about educating children is that they never do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. Yes. If you tell a child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying and cheating other people, it will copy your behavior, not follow your instructions. Now, if we have, the kind of people who are leading the AI revolution, telling the AI, don't lie, but the AI observes them, observes the world, and sees them lying and cheating and manipulating, it will do the same. Yeah. I mean, if AI is developed not through a cooperative effort of humans who trust each other, but it is developed through an arms race, a competition. So again, you can tell the AI as much as you like to be compassionate and to be benevolent, but if it observes the world, because AI learns from observation. Yes. Yeah. If it observes the world, or it observes how humans behave towards each other, it observes how its own creators behave. And if they are ruthless, power-hungry competitors, it will also be ruthless and power-hungry. You cannot create a compassionate and trustworthy AI through an arms race. It just won't happen.
Well, yes, Yuval, you've said this. If you had said this in 1980 during what was known as the AI winter, we'd say, yes, we must plan and make sure this isn't happening. But it's already happening. There is an arms race. The very people who are spending the billions and billions are the same people, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, who gave us the disaster of Facebook and social media and what it has done to the polity of the world and to the poverty of the world, to essentially, in this country, as we know, the rivers are polluted and contaminated. You wouldn't swim in any river in Britain because there's raw sewage being poured into it. Well, our children are breathing a cultural river, which is similarly polluted and contaminated. And we all know this, and Facebook knows this, and Twitter and X know this, but they do nothing about it. And if you even mention guardrails and regulation, they scream communism. And Trump has just announced that he will ban individual states in America from regulating AI. There is an arms race. So everything you said is happening. So how can we come together to stop AI in the hands of corporate greed and national greed in this arms race, whether it's China against America or it's one company against another? It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's moving very fast, partly because there is also enormous positive potential, of course. You know, in everything from healthcare to tackling the climate emergency. Yes. So we have to acknowledge there is also this enormous positive potential. The question is not how to stop the development of AI, it's how to make sure that it is used for good. And here, I think that the main problem is simply an issue of priority, of what comes first. Humanity now faces two major challenges. On the one hand, we have the challenge of developing a super intelligent AI. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we have the challenge of how to rebuild trust between humans, because trust all over the world, both between countries and also within countries, is collapsing. Nobody is absolutely certain why it's happening, but everybody is able to observe it. I mean, maybe the last thing that, let's say, Republicans and Democrats in the US can agree on is that trust is collapsing.
Yes.
It's that they don't trust each other. They don't agree on any fact except that they don't trust each other.
So this is the worst possible time for us to come together. We no longer believe in global institutions like the United Nations, the WHO.
Even in national institutions.
Yes.
I mean, one of the explanations for the collapse of trust is that over thousands of years, I mean, humans have been amazing in building, despite all the conflicts and tensions and so forth. You know, 100,000 years ago, humans lived in tiny bands of hunter-gatherers and could not trust anybody outside their band of 50 or 100 individuals. Now we have nations of hundreds of millions of people. We have a global trade network, a global scientific network with billions of people. So we are obviously quite good at building trust. Yeah. But over thousands of years, we have built trust through human communication. And now, within almost every relationship, there is a machine, an algorithm, an AI in between. And we see a collapse of trust in humans, whereas there is a rise of trust in algorithms and AIs. Again, I mentioned money as the greatest story ever told. So you see that people are losing trust in human-made money, like euros and dollars and pounds, but they shift the trust
from fiat to
cryptocurrencies and to an algorithm-based money. So we have these two problems of the developing AI and rebuilding trust between humans. And the question is which one we solve first, which is the priority. Now, unfortunately, you hear some of the smartest people in the world, they say, first we solve the AI problem, and then with the help of AI, we'll solve the trust problem. And I think this is a very bad idea. If we develop AI through an arms race between humans who can't trust each other, there is absolutely no reason to expect that we'll be able to trust the AIs. I mean, the big paradox is that when you talk with people like Mark Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk, they often say openly that they are also afraid of the dangerous potential of AI. They are not blind to it, they are not oblivious to it, but they say that they are caught in this arms race that if I slow down, my competitors will not slow down. I can't trust them, so I must move faster. But then you ask them, okay, so you can't trust your human competitors. Do you think you'll be able to trust this super intelligent alien intelligence you're developing? And the same people who just told you they can't trust other humans tell you, oh, but I think we'll be able to trust the alien AIs, which is almost insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the right order of doing it is first solve the human trust problem, then together, in a cooperative way, we can develop and educate trustworthy AIs. But unfortunately, we are doing the exact opposite.
Yes. And there's, as you know, there's been for decades the doomsday clock, which the nuclear scientists set midnight is Armageddon, the end of everything. And it's been roughly at 89 seconds to midnight for the last few years. It's crept up over recent days for obvious reasons. But there's another metric that I've been studying recently called P-doom. It's the letter P, which is probability, brackets, doom, close brackets. It's one used by people in the business, so, you know, the scientists in AI. So, for example, Alicia Yudkowsky, who's the founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in California, sets P at 90. That's to say, a 90% chance of human extinction through AI. Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist for Meta, sets it at 0. But then he is the chief scientist for Meta. So that's like a tobacco executive saying, cancer? No chance. What are you talking about? Can't possibly happen. But so I've worked out that roughly the lowest median is between 7.5% and 10% of human catastrophe of an extinction order through AI, if things are not controlled in the way you say they should be. Now, the chance of winning the lottery in this country is 0.0000022%. So what you're saying here is that the chance of human extinction at 7.5%, which is the lowest really amongst the current important scientists, Nobel Prize winners like Hinton and Hassabis. 7.5% is 3.4 million times greater than 0.00022%. So if I were to give you a lottery ticket and say this is a valid lottery ticket, the only difference is you are 3.4 million times more likely to win, you would take it. And that's the odds we're playing with at a low rate. So let's look at the bad side of things. As we've said, we're going about it in the wrong order, as you've put it. Most people who understand the science say there is a very severe chance that humanity will be extinguished by this, a greater chance than by nuclear Armageddon, in fact, or indeed climate change. And humans are not in a position at the moment to trust each other and to establish guardrails, to agree on how we should go forward. So do you have a solution for us? I'm almost on my knees begging you at this point. I don't have children, so I can almost say I don't care. But I have lots of godchildren, and I have lots of great nieces and great nephews, so I do care about what happens to our planet. And I'm sure you do too.
Again, I think that it's very dangerous to think too much about, kind of doomsday and extinction scenarios. They cause people to despair. We do have what it takes to manage this revolution because we are creating it. This is not the dinosaurs being extinguished by an asteroid coming from outer space that they have no way of even understanding, let alone controlling. This is a process which, at least for now, is under human control. In 5 years, in 10 years, we will have millions and even billions of AI agents taking more and more decisions, inventing more and more ideas. It will be a hybrid society. So it will become more difficult. But we need to start with the realization that this is a completely human-made danger, We have everything we need in order to manage it. The main missing ingredient is trust between human beings. And again, over tens of thousands of years, we have demonstrated that we are capable of building trust, even on a global level. Yes. So it's not beyond our capabilities. And it then goes back, to the old questions of politics and ethics, of how do you build trust between human beings. And we need to think also about more kind of concrete and immediate questions. One of the biggest questions we will be facing in the next few years is how to deal with these new AI agents.
Yes.
Do we consider them as persons? More and more people are entering relationships, personal relationships with AIs. More and more corporations and armies are giving AIs control, agency over important decisions. This is not, some kind of philosophical question.
No,
it's a
real.
Completely, should AIs have the ability to open a bank account and manage a bank account? Yeah. That's a very practical question. We are very close to the point when you can tell an AI, go out there, make money. Your goal is to make $1 billion. Yeah. In computer science, very often the difficult question is, how do you define the goal? Yeah. And one of the things about money, it's a very easy goal to define. Yeah. Now, an AI can make money in many ways. It can hire its services to people to write their essays or books or whatever, many things it can do. It can earn money. It can then invest this money in the stock exchange. Yeah. So do we as a society want to allow AI agents, and then this is not a question for 50 years, this is a question for 5 years, maybe 1 year, to open bank accounts and manage them in any way they see fit. Yeah. In the US, basically, the legal system, they never thought about it, but I'm not sure about the situation in the UK, but in the US, there is an open legal path for AIs to be recognized as persons with rights.
Yes, Pete Singer has written about this and others.
Yeah. According to US law, corporations are persons and they have rights like freedom of speech.
Yes.
Now, so in the US, you can incorporate an AI. Previously, when you incorporated a corporation like Google or General Motors or whatever, this was a fiction.
Yeah.
Because all the decisions of Google were made by human beings.
Yes.
So, okay, legally, Google is a person with rights, but every decision of Google needs a human executive, accountant, engineer, lawyer to make the decision. Now this is no longer the case. Yep. You can incorporate an AI, and the AI can make the decisions by itself. Yep. One of the reasons that the US Supreme Court recognized corporations as persons is in order to make it possible for corporations to donate money to politicians. This was the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Right. Now, so imagine an AI that makes billions of dollars. It's maybe the richest person in the US in a few years will not be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. It will be an AI. Yeah. And this AI has the freedom of speech, which includes the right to donate money to politicians, maybe on condition that they further advance rights for AI.
Absolutely, and reduce guardrails and so forth. Yes.
Now, this is a completely realistic scenario. This is not like science fiction.
No, absolutely.
So, and this is a question that we as a society need to decide, do we acknowledge AIs as persons with rights? Now, there are people who are already convinced that AIs, because they have interaction with them, have consciousness, have feelings. So maybe in a few years, the world is divided between countries that recognize AIs as persons with rights and countries that don't.
Absolutely. And I suppose for everyone in the room, there's a consideration. I remember I gave a talk on AI back in 2015 in Hay-on-Wye, and I said that the way things are going, there are certain jobs that people might not have. I said, for example, if you have a child who's studying to be a doctor, that's fine, but maybe a radiologist. And woman put her hand up very crossly and said, my daughter's studying radiology. And I said, well, you know, imagine that every mammogram ever taken is available to an AI and it can examine thousands in a second and make a judgment on it. A radiologist is going to go out of work. Now, who's going to go out of work here? I don't know if the chief financial officer is president of Octopus, but I have been sort of talking to some people who say that the first really high-level job to be replaced by an AI completely will be a CFO. They can be so well, everything they do.
I mean, it's already happened. It's news editors.
Oh, right.
One of the most
editors,
important jobs in the 20th century, even before, was news editors.
Yeah.
The editors of the newspapers, of the television, they were extremely powerful people who control the public conversation.
Yeah. But I think what I would just end by saying to everybody is maybe don't concentrate on how efficient you are, on how brilliantly you complete a task, because that's what AI can do, especially the agentic AI that Yuval's been talking about. Concentrate on what a wonderful human being you are, how kind you are, how courteous, how considerate, how you improve the life of those around you, which is very often the opposite of what efficient people do. And maybe that, for the time being, at least, is the secret, that human exceptionalism will be how good we are as people, how much we make a room light up when we walk into it, how much pleasure we spread, not how quickly we can complete a task, because we'll never match the AI. So on that note, at least I think we should end, and I hope we haven't given too much terror to everybody. I will always say that the thing about this technology is it's simultaneously thrilling and chilling. And the thrilling parts may well cause us all to live much longer, happier lives. We can hope so. But Yuval, as always, an absolute joy speaking to you, and thank you for...
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So great to meet you. I was fangirling backstage because I'm such a huge fan. You know, I was telling Yuval that I was one of your publicists for Sapiens. I bought several copies of that book. I would give them out to people and just that sort of thing. They're always so exciting. You're so granular in the way you talk about things that we kind of take for granted, you know. In this new book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI. It's real fascinating talking about information. I wanted to start with this. I know this is a tough question, and you even admit in the book that it's tough. What exactly is information? How do we define that?
So many people think erroneously that information is truth, or information is the raw material of truth. You get lots of information, you analyze it, you get truth. And it isn't. Most of information is junk. Most of information is not the truth. What really defines information is connection. This is why the book is called Nexus, connection.
Right.
Because what information really does is to connect a lot of individuals, a lot of separate humans, entities, into a network. It's a glue. And you can connect, sometimes you can connect things together with the truth, but in many, many occasions, you can use fiction and fantasy and lie and illusions to also connect lots of people together into a state, an army, a corporation, a religion, whatever. To give just one example, if you think, for instance, about visual information, about portraits, about images, paintings. So if you think, what is the most famous portrait, the most common portrait in the world? What is the most famous face in history? It's the face of Jesus. You have billions and billions of images, portraits of Jesus created over the last 2,000 years. They are like everywhere on the planet, in churches, cathedrals, private homes, schools, government offices, and not a single one of them is true.
Right.
All of them, 100%.
The Swedish Jesus. Right?
The Swedish Jesus,
Right.
exactly.
We all know Jesus was black.
He came from Scandinavia. And the thing is that, I mean, we just have, there is no portrait from his lifetime. If anybody even bothered, you know, he's a small provincial teacher helping people, curing the sick in a small province of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, raising people from the dead,
Raising
stuff like that.
the usual stuff.
Yeah, watering the wine. I like all the magic tricks, actually. Yeah.
And we don't know if anybody even bothered to draw a portrait of him. If they did, nothing survived. In the Bible, there is not a single word about how the man actually looked like. There is one sentence describing what he wore, his clothes, but nothing about whether he was tall or short, fat or thin, black hair, blonde hair, bald, nothing.
Right.
Everything we have is just coming out of the imagination of artists that lived centuries and sometimes thousands of years after him. Like one of the most famous images of Jesus, like the Scandinavian Jesus, was made by an American artist in 1940 to give to soldiers and so forth in the Second World War. And it became, according to some statistics, I'm not sure about it exactly, according to some statistics, the most kind of successful painting of the 20th century in terms of how many copies there are.
So Jesus is basically Bing Crosby, basically. I mean, that's pretty much the image.
Yeah, it's the image. I mean, if you compare the real man to the story about the man, to the image about the man, which is mostly fiction created long after he was dead, I mean, the image is far more powerful. And it's not necessarily bad, of course. You can use it to give hope to people. You can use it to encourage people to be charitable, to help one another. So I'm not saying that fiction is necessarily bad.
Right.
I mean, we are in Los Angeles, you know, the capital city of fiction, in the world.
Exactly.
So we shouldn't trash fiction. But, you know, also...
Oh, we can trash it here.
But also I just came from New York, which is another capital city of fiction in the world, because money is also fiction.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest storytellers in the world, in the end, they are not in LA, they're not in Hollywood, they're in Wall Street. They tell the really powerful fictions.
Yeah.
And it works. I mean, again, there are some negative aspects, positive aspects, but what you can't argue is about how successful it is in connecting people.
Yeah.
You think about the USA today, maybe what is the last thing that everybody in the United States still agree on is the dollar.
Right.
Like Republicans and Democrats can't agree about anything, basically, like who won the last elections. They still agree on the value of a dollar.
Yeah.
And even though it's just a fiction, I mean, the dollars, they have no objective value.
Yeah, if you're on a desert island, a coconut's more valuable than a dollar.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's fast. Now, so information is valuable because it connects people, right? But it's not just, it exists as an objective truth, right? So like animals, can animals get information, or what do they get, you know, when they absorb an objective truth? That's not information, that's something different?
Animals also, of course, communicate, and they pass information one to the other. But the ability, I mean, there are several types of information in the world. So you have objective truth, facts about the world, which, you know, if an asteroid comes from outer space to hit Earth or to hit the dinosaurs, the fact that nobody knows about it and nobody believes it, it doesn't matter, it's still true.
Right.
That's objective. Then you have the subjective area of existence, which are things that exist in the mind of just one individual. Like if I'm in pain, I feel the pain, it's true for me, nobody else in the universe feels it. Even if I tell you about it, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, you don't feel it, only I feel the pain.
Or if you thought someone was eating the dogs and the cats and the pets, like...
That's the third kind of information. That's the intersubjective. I mean, so you have objective, you have subjective, then you have the intersubjective.
Okay, what's
the intersubjective realm? This is things that exist in the communication network between people. So this is where you find the image of Jesus, and this is where you find the US dollar, and this is where you find the people eating dogs and cats.
Right.
It's something that is not objectively true, but it's not just the fantasy of a single individual or the feeling, only I feel it. It's in the communication, in the information network between all of us, or some of us, if enough people believe it, if enough people talk about it, it connects. Again, even if we continue with these dogs and cats, you know, you had maybe the most important conversation in the world meant to help the citizens of the United States decide who would control the nuclear weapons that could destroy the world.
Exactly.
And the only thing that most people remember from this hour of debate was the dogs and cats.
Welcome to America. That's the only thing that's important, honestly.
But again, I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
Sure.
But in terms of kind of PR, even if he didn't think about it in advance, Donald Trump, it was a very smart move. Because you can say, I mean, in politics and in much of life, the key question is what are people talking about?
Right.
What is the subject of the conversation? What people say, what people think is less important than deciding the subject of the conversation. Now, if people in the US, for instance, would talk about abortion, this would be the main subject of conversation, Harris wins. If people talk about immigration, it doesn't matter what they say. If this is the subject of conversation, then this is very much in favor of Trump. Because you can think about like a typical conversation afterwards. Somebody says, he said that they're eating the dogs and cats. And then the other person replies, but it's not true. It's just a fiction. And then the Trump supporter says, yes, well, this is maybe exaggerated, but there are still really important problems with immigration. And they start talking about immigration.
Right.
So
the information he's getting across is there's a problem.
Yes, the information that really gets across is that there is a problem with immigration. So maybe it's not the dogs and cats, but this is still the subject people are talking about.
Right.
And again, this is the how to control the conversation is one of the most important things in the world. And when you look at the history of who controls the conversation, so what's interesting at the present moment we are now living in is that for the first time in history, it is non-humans controlling the conversation. And I don't mean the cats and dogs.
Sure.
I mean the algorithms, the AIs.
Is it controlling it because it's telling us what we should be interested in? Or is it just giving us those things that we should be interested in? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter how exactly you define it, but you know, if you think even today, who decides what's on the front page of the New York Times? It's a human being. Who decides what will be on the main news, on Fox Television News or CNN News? It's a human being. It's a human news editor. But who decides what will be at the top of the Facebook newsfeed? What would be the next video you will see on TikTok? It's not a human being. An algorithm decides what people's attention will be focused on. And this is one of the, there was a lot of talk about AI replacing humans in different jobs, automating jobs. And people thought, oh, they will replace the taxi drivers. They will replace the textile workers. One of the first jobs they automated is news editors.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because again, some of the most important, powerful people in the world used to be news editors. You know, like Lenin, before he was dictator of the Soviet Union, his one job basically was editor of a newspaper, Iskra. Benito Mussolini, before he was dictator of Italy, he was editor of a newspaper, Avanti. And this was kind of the ladder of promotion. Yeah. Journalist, newspaper editor, dictator of the country.
I see a horrible pattern developing here.
And he was not a journalist.
Oh, okay,
he was a painter.
Oh,
he was originally a painter, not a very successful one.
Right.
And now also the painters are being replaced. So that's a worrying pattern.
Yeah,
I mean, both.
AI was supposed to give us free time and allow us time to paint, and now it's doing the painting and the art stuff, and we have to do all the work. You know? It's just upside down. You know, you talk about technology a lot in the book too, and it's interesting how technology doesn't necessarily make things better, right? That's not a straight line like you think it would. Like you think we would get better information, like books, the invention of books. You know, talk about how the invention of books changed the way information was synthesized, I guess, or how it changed things.
So there are two important points in the history of books. You have the actual invention of the book, and then after a couple of thousand years, you have the invention of the printing press. So if we look first at books, somebody needed to invent the book. You know, writing was invented in ancient Mesopotamia, what is today Iraq, about 5,000 years ago. But for thousands of years afterwards, people were writing a lot of documents, but not books. I mean, a book is a very special type of document.
Yeah.
It's a very long document, lots of chapters, or if it's a cookbook, lots of recipes, or lots of stories, or whatever. It has many copies spread in many different places that are all the same, which is basically what today people try to do with blockchain, for the folks who know the technology. And this was, in a way, revolutionary, because you can get exactly the same information to a lot of people spread over a vast territory.
Right.
So when you see the rise, for instance, of holy books, like the Bible, the idea there, you can, for instance, limit the power of the king, of the emperor, by having many copies of the same holy book in many different places. Because previously you have a temple of the great god in the middle of the capital city,
Right.
and the king controls the temple, so the king can tell you anything he wants about, oh, God said this, and the goddess said that.
He was the only one that had that channel.
He was controlling the kind of communication channel to heaven.
Right.
And then people came up with the idea, let's have the holy book, which was supposed to democratize the communication with the gods. Because if you have lots of identical copies of the same holy book in lots of places, the king can't just change what's in it. He can change the copy he has in the palace, but there are thousands of other copies which are supposed to be identical, and it's easy to check and say, no, this is not what it says in the book. So this sounds a wonderful idea, which should have democratized power.
Right.
But then there are always problems with technologies. And the book is a technology. We don't think about religions like Christianity or Judaism or Islam as being based on a technology, but they are based on a technology, on a book.
Yeah, things had to be put together in a certain way, and people had to make decisions about what would be in that book, which makes a decision about the religion itself.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Once you have this idea, let's have one holy book everywhere, then the question comes, but what will be in it?
Right.
Now,
What recipes get in
Yeah,
the
what recipes in the cookbook? Now, if it just came down from heaven, no problem.
Yes.
But it didn't.
Right.
So you basically had a
Slow down now. No, just kidding.
No, I mean, we know, we have documents from the period. I mean,
Sure.
Jesus never read the Bible, the New Testament. It didn't exist in his time.
Yeah.
The New Testament, as we know it, it's 27 texts. Some of them are attributed to St. Paul. Some of them are the Gospels. Some of them are, letters written by other disciples. And in the first centuries of Christianity, there was no New Testament. Nothing. We have lots of evidence from the first centuries of Christianity, no New Testament. Well, lots and lots of different texts. Gospels, stories about Jesus, letters of different people, prayers, all kinds of prophecies.
It's kind of where the expression "spread the good word," I think, really comes from, because that's all they could do was talk about it, right? Yeah.
They talked a lot, they wrote, and there was a flood of information. And at a certain point, people said, well, I mean, we don't know what to read. What are the good books? What are the reliable books? Which are less reliable? And eventually, about 400 years after Jesus, in the late 4th century, they have a big convention, a committee, in the city of Carthage, which is today in Tunisia, in North Africa, where bishops and theologians, mostly from North Africa, convene to... North Africa was a very important center of Christianity in those days. And they convene to decide what will be in the recommendation list. It started as a recommendation list, the same way like you have so many TV series on Netflix. You don't know what to watch.
Yeah.
So you have these like top 10 series to watch this winter.
Right.
So it was the same. It was top 27 books, the texts every Christian should read.
It's like you're at the end of the Gospel of Matthew, and then the Gospel of Mark is loading up as it's finishing.
Something like that.
Right.
And then they were not the authors of the book. Different people wrote different texts. They were the editors.
Right.
They decided what will be in the recommendation list.
And they just decided themselves they had the authority to do this.
they had the
It wasn't like
authority.
they were given the authority. They
No.
just took that authority, right?
And to give you just one example of a key discussion, of a key choice they made. At the time, there was a very popular text, early Christian text, called The Acts of Paul and Thecla. This was a text describing the activities of St. Paul and his female disciple, Thecla, who performed miracles and preached to people and baptized. And she was a leader of the church. And this text was very popular at the time. And it was seen as evidence that women can be leaders in the church.
Right.
And can be on the same level with men.
There were many women at the time that were actually leaders in the church. Yeah.
And then there was another text, a letter from the same St. Paul, which scholars believe was actually forged more than 100 years after he was dead. A letter from St. Paul to a disciple of St. Paul called Timothy, and in which St. Paul says that women should not be leaders, they should keep silent and obey the men, and their salvation would come from having children and taking care of them and obeying the men, basically. And the committee in Carthage decided to leave the Acts of Paul and Thecla out, which is why I guess most people here in the audience never heard of it.
Right.
But the letter to Timothy got in, and this is the first epistle to Timothy, which is like in billions of Bibles all over the world. And this is the power of editors.
Yeah.
So this is the invention of the book. And now let's jump 1,000 years to Gutenberg bringing print technology from China to Europe in the middle of the 15th century, and the print revolution.
And one of the distinctions, before you talk about that, because this is interesting too, is that just because you had a book and the other book was a copy of that, it doesn't mean that was a direct copy or that it was exactly the same.
Right.
And so, just like telling stories, you know, an 8th generation book might be very different in some aspects of it. Also, people may have made intentional changes if they wanted to, because who's going to check it, right? So the printing press is a revolution in many ways because it gets rid of that.
It gets rid of the mistakes or the intentional changes.
Right.
And it also makes it far, far cheaper. Like previously, if you want to copy the Bible or anything else, you need a person who, writing by hand, everything, every single letter in every single copy, somebody has to write by hand. Whereas with print, one time, yes, you need to do this big work of putting all the blocks of print one time.
Right.
Once you have them, you can print as many copies as you like. You automated it, made it much, much cheaper. So you have an explosion of book production. And many people think that this was what ignited the scientific revolution. And you go to places like Silicon Valley today, and you talk with them about the dangers of information technology and algorithms and AIs, you can be almost certain that at a certain point in the conversation, they will mention the print revolution, and they will say, look, how wonderful print was. The printing press brought us the scientific revolution. And this is just not true. The printing press did contribute to the scientific revolution, but it took almost 200 years from the middle of the 15th century with print technology until the flowering of the scientific revolution in the 17th century with people like Newton and Leibniz and so forth.
Right.
And in between, in those 200 years, Europe had the worst wave of wars of religion and the worst wave of witch hunts in its history. And the printing press contributed a lot to these waves of basically craziness and violence. Because the most Again, most information is junk, not the truth. The truth is a very costly and rare kind of information. The truth is often complicated, and people want simple things. The truth is often boring. All these mathematical equations that Copernicus finds out about the planets in astronomy. Very few people read Copernicus in the 16th century. The big bestsellers of the period were extremist religious tracts and witch hunting manuals.
Yeah.
Like, to give one very famous example.
Sounds practical.
Yeah, everybody needs it at home, right?
You got to know how to catch a witch.
Yeah, how to identify and catch witches. So again, one of the very first, very shortly after the invention of print, one of the very first bestsellers of early modern Europe was a book called The Hammer of the Witches, Malleus Maleficarum, which it started, again, there was this, in the Middle Ages, they hardly hunted witches. Contrary to this kind of popular image of Middle Ages, witch hunting, medieval European, they didn't think much about witches.
Too much plague going on.
Yeah, other things to worry about. They knew, okay, there are some witches maybe in the village. They can make you love potions. If your cow goes lost, you can go to the witch. She will help you find your cow. Sometimes they can poison somebody, but it's not a big deal.
I love that. Witches, oh, hey, it's a witch. Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Part of the social fabric.
Yes.
And then, around the time Gutenberg invents the print, a conspiracy theory arises that actually all the witches in the world are part of a single conspiracy led by Satan, which aims to completely destroy human civilization. And one of the first people, at first it was a very small, only a few people believed in it. And one of the first people who believed in it was called Heinrich Kramer. And he started a do-it-yourself witch hunt in what is today Austria in the Alps.
Of course.
And arrested, he had these very strange sexual fantasies. He was one of the people who said that most witches were women and that it was driven by powerful sexual urges. And the church actually suppressed it. They said this person is crazy, and they released the women he arrested, and they drove him out of the province. And he took revenge through the printing press. He wrote this book, The Hammer of the Witches, and he printed it. And it was now easy to print because of the printing press. And this sold like it was, again, one of the first big bestsellers.
Right.
To understand why, I'll give just one example from the book. There is a chapter about the ability of witches to steal penises from men. And he brings evidence, Heinrich Kramer.
How do you know you're good at that is my question. You know, like,
at what, at stealing?
Yeah.
They have collections. No. I mean, he brings, for instance, a story of a man who wakes up in the morning and discovers that his penis is gone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Lorena Bobbitt.
So
yeah, right.
He suspects the local witch.
Right.
She must have done it. So he goes to the local witch.
Wait, I have stuff. It's like, honey, do you know where I put my penis?
Exactly.
Just can't. Do you think I should check with the witch? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, go ahead. I had to do the bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Goes to the witch, and she says, okay, I'll give you back your penis. And she says,
no way.
Go out, you see this tree, climb up the tree.
Wow.
He climbs up the tree. At the top of the tree, he finds a bird's nest where the witch kept all the penises she stole from different men in the community. And she says, okay, you can take yours.
Yeah.
And
Make
then
sure you choose the right one. Well, I don't know. This one looks pretty good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He chooses the biggest one.
I'll just act out the bits. Yeah. I'll act out the bits, Yuval. You just tell me what they are.
So he takes the biggest one.
Right.
And then the witch shouts to him, no, you can't take this one. This one belongs to the parish priest.
Right.
So,
then a brother comes and says, hey, man, where's my dick? Somebody take it.
So you can understand why this book sold a few more copies than Copernicus's mathematical equations about how the moon and Mars move around in the sky.
He should have had missing penises in that book, and it would have been better. The other thing is that it's funny, when you put a lie in print, it does something to that lie. Like, people don't treat it the same. I remember Bob Saget, he was a great comedian. He had a great line where he would he would say a ridiculous thing. And he would say, no, really, I read that. No, really, I wrote it down and I read that. You know, I believe everything I read, you know, was the thing. And I always thought that was a great line because he's right. If you tell someone you read that, you know, it's like somehow it makes it more believable to be true. So the fact that he put it in print, that's what's interesting to me, that made it true.
I mean, especially, let's try to go back, it's the 15th century. I mean, for many people around, this is just the very early days of the print revolution. For many people around, the only book they ever saw in their life was the Bible. And there is a feeling that books are not just true, books are holy. And suddenly you have print, it's become much cheaper and easier, and you have this Hammer of the Witches, but it's a book. I mean, you grow up like venerating the Bible.
Right.
And you know, this is a book, it's written in a book, it's not some kind of rumor you hear in the village.
Right.
So it's very powerful. Now again, it all sounds very funny until you realize the consequences. Because the consequences was tens of thousands of people being tortured and killed in the most horrendous ways in the great European witch hunting craze. Again, to give just one example, in Munich, southern Germany, there was a famous case. They arrested an entire family, the Pappenheimer family, accused them all of being witches. Again, according to what's written in this witch hunting manual.
Right.
And so you have a father, mother, 3 children, youngest age 10 years old. And to prove that they are witches, they torture them because this is what the Hammer of the Witches recommend. I mean, the witches, to get the truth out of them, you have to torture them.
Right.
And they start with the 10-year-old boy, because he is the weakest link. And you can still, if you go to the archives in Munich, you can still read the protocol of the interrogation. And they torture a 10-year-old boy until he admits that his mother was a witch. And this is how they break the family. They all confess under horrific torture to poisoning people and summoning hailstorms and being in witches' Sabbath. And again, they had this crazy idea that the witches come together in huge gatherings and have sexual orgies and kill children and eat them and drink their blood and all that. And you know, it comes to America, the Salem witch hunts.
Right.
This is where it originated. And this is a very important lesson for today, because the same thing happened with the internet and social media. You know, almost more than 300 years after Salem, there are millions of Americans today who basically believe that there is a worldwide conspiracy led by Satan to destroy human civilization, that people gather in orgies and exploit and kill. There are millions of Americans, including even, at least according to some reports, in Congress.
Right.
You know, QAnon and all that, this is what they believe.
Yeah, I think they believe Democrats eat children or drink their blood or something
And
like that.
this comes from, I mean, it's not a new, there are very few completely new stories in history.
Right.
It all comes from somewhere. So it's amazing to think that 300 years after the Salem witch hunts, you see the same thing again in America. And it also, to some extent, is because of a new information revolution.
Yeah.
That now it's very easy to spread these things with all the algorithms and so forth on social media. The idea that just by making it easier to spread information, the truth will spread, again and again in history we learn this is not the case.
Is that true?
The truth, again, it's costly. You have to work hard to find evidence, research, like how do I know something about, you know, the Pappenheimer family in Munich? I mean, you need to know German, you need to travel to Munich to go to the archives to read this thing. This is expensive.
Right.
To write fiction, you don't need anything, you just write the first thing that comes to your mind. And the truth is often complicated, whereas fiction can be made as simple and also as funny, as entertaining, as frightening as you would like it to be.
Is that why conspiracy theories catch on so much more than the truth? Because they appeal to maybe a part of the brain that gives people endorphins from those things, you know? Because so many have persisted for so long. Racism is in that category, too, of a conspiracy theory, you know, something made up that makes people feel a certain way, whether it's hatred or whatever, or putting people in a box and that sort of thing. Where does that emanate from? Why is that so easy for humans to believe that kind of information?
Because, I mean, it's a combination of two things. On the one hand, it's cheap. I mean, if you invent some racist theory, you don't need to spend the time, the money, the effort to look for the evidence. You just write whatever you want. And then it can be very appealing, at least to some people, to believe in it.
Yeah.
So the truth is often not just complicated, the truth is often painful. The truth is often unattractive. You know, from the level of a single individual, this is why people go to therapy. Because if it was so nice to know the truth about ourselves, we wouldn't need therapists. I mean, we go sometimes to years of therapy until we can acknowledge some of the painful things about our life that we would rather forget, that we would rather not acknowledge. And this goes all the way to entire nations that there are there are skeletons and sometimes cemeteries in the closets of nations that they don't want to recognize.
Yeah.
So, and again, if you want the truth, you have to deal with it. If you want fiction, you can just make all these things disappear.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting too, there's so many, this is what I mean about granular. You talk about bureaucracy in your book, which I wouldn't think that would be a thing. Like there's so many words we take for granted, you know. And, but when you go into it, I mean, even thinking about your family and World War II and how bureaucracy was used for people to hate Jews, you know, if you don't have the right papers, you know. You're not in the right place in town. I mean, there's so many ways that bureaucracies can mess with the truth too and have control over, be the entity that controls the truth as well, right? With information, with just basic information, things that you would think would be innocent, like a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, bureaucracy is like sorcery of information. That with a single piece of paper, you can save or destroy a life, a family, a neighborhood, a village, and it goes back in thousands of years. Like you go to the Roman Empire. Yeah. So if you have the document proving that this village paid its taxes to the emperor, and somebody makes this paper disappear or it gets lost, it can ruin the whole village. And if you're a bureaucrat who can, I know where the paper is. Wait a minute, I think I saw it. Oh, here it is. And you save the village.
Right.
Just by finding this piece of paper.
Unbelievable.
And
Native American land here in America, I mean, put a stamp on a piece of paper, sorry, that land is ours.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically how it was taken.
I mean, land ownership is very interesting in this way because before the invention of writing and bureaucracy, to own a piece of land was a communal matter. Like, what does it mean? Think about it. What does it mean that I own this field?
Right.
I mean,
this part of the earth I own.
Yeah, this is part of the earth that belongs to me. What does it mean?
Right, that's so
means
true. Wow, yeah.
that your neighbors, the people around you, agree that this is yours, and they agree by certain actions. Like they don't graze their goats there, or they don't pick fruits there without your permission, because they acknowledge, oh, this field, it belongs to him.
Or they don't let witches collect penises there.
Exactly. That's their decision.
Right, that's
But ownership is a communal matter.
right.
So on the one hand, it limits private property rights. You can only do with the land what the community agrees you can do with it.
Right.
And it also limits the power of a distant king or emperor to say kind of levy taxes on the village, because how can the distant king know who owns what and how much to take? There is no paper trail. Now, then writing is invented, again, 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, and the meaning of ownership changes. Then, in ancient Mesopotamia, suddenly, to own a field means that there is a clay tablet, they wrote on clay tablets, which are basically chunks of mud.
You're right.
There is a chunk of mud that says this field is mine. Like there is an official document, an official chunk of mud, that some bureaucrat wrote, this field belongs to Yuval. Stamp, that's it. This is now the meaning of ownership.
Wow.
And it means two things, contradictory in some way. On the one hand, it promotes private property rights. Because I can walk around with this chunk of mud, this field is mine. And I can now sell my field to you, even if all the neighbors disagree. You give me a goat, I give you this chunk of mud, now the field is yours. And if the neighbors don't agree, it's their problem. I can enforce this. because this is the meaning of ownership, and it's the same today. It's a piece of paper, or it's a silicon chip. There is some silicon chip somewhere, or there is some piece of paper in Los Angeles County offices or whatever that says this is mine, and this is ownership. So private property rights suddenly become possible. At the same time, also centralized authoritarian regimes become possible, because the king in the capital city now has an archive of all these kind of chunks of mud, or pieces of paper, that tells the king who owns what. And this is the basis for the taxation system.
Right, right.
And you can now tax the kingdom and use the taxes to pay soldiers to enforce it. And now, of course, it should be very, very clear it's not all bad. Bureaucracy can do bad things or good things, like any things that we invent.
Right.
And it's very important to understand it, because it's hard to understand bureaucracies. They're a very recent invention in human evolution. Only 5,000 years ago, the first bureaucracy. But the entire world is now built on them. And people find it hard to understand how bureaucracy functions. And this is one of the failures, by the way, of Los Angeles, of Hollywood. They make very few films about bureaucracy. Like, you have all these superhero films.
Sexy topic.
Yeah, I mean, they have all these superhero films about Spider-Man and Superman, nothing about accountants.
Right.
Like super accountant that defeats the bad guys by having them fill all these forms and discovering tax evasion.
Right, the Avengers, tax season.
But this is how the real world functions, not with Spider-Man, with accountants. And so it's important to understand that many of the good things in life, they now rely on bureaucracies. So again, I'll tell one story. Today, one of the big conspiracy theories about bureaucracy is the deep state.
Right. Yes.
Whenever I hear the word deep state, I think about the sewage system. Because it's deep, the state built it.
Right.
It's deep, it goes under our houses and neighborhoods and all these pipes and pumps.
Right.
And who knows what's happening there? Like, I go to the toilet, I do my thing, I flush it down, it goes into the deep state. And
you're welcome, deep state.
And the deep state protects my life.
Yes.
Because it keeps the shit
It keeps it out.
separate from the drinking water, at least in places where it works right.
Right.
And this was not so for most of history.
Yes.
For most of history, especially big cities, were extremely dirty and polluted places full of epidemics.
Right.
Because, you have hundreds of thousands of people crammed together with their animals and with the sewage and the garbage. It's a paradise for germs. And in the 19th century, the biggest city in the world was London, suffered from repeated epidemics of cholera and dysentery, until a superhero came to the rescue called Jon Snow. Not the guy from Game of Thrones, a real-life person, Jon Snow. He was a bureaucrat with a medical background, bureaucrat doctor, and there was a cholera epidemic in London. People were dying. And he wanted to know what is causing the epidemic. Many people said it was something in the air, it was witches, it was the Jews, it was something. And he says, no, it's not the Jews, it's the water.
It was witches, it was the Jews.
And
So
I said,
terrible,
this was the world.
Yeah.
And he suspected the water. So he went around London. Just any time he heard about somebody who died from cholera or got sick with cholera, he would rush to the place and interview either the person, or if he died or she died, they would interview the family. Where did you get your drinking water from?
Right.
And he was a bureaucrat. He made lists, hundreds of lists of people and where they got their water from. It's not something you see on a Netflix series, but it was one of the most important discoveries in history. Because when he connected all the lists, all the dots, he saw that almost all the people who died from cholera at a certain point had a sip of water from the well in Broad Street in Soho. And he showed it to the officials of the municipality and convinced them to disable the pump of this well, and the epidemic stopped.
Right.
And then they investigated, and they discovered that the well, just a meter away from the well, somebody dug a cesspit. And the sewage from the cesspit just flowed into the well and people drank it. And this was one of the kind of key discoveries that led to the establishment of this deep state of the sewage system, that whose main function, or one of the main functions, is to keep the sewage separate from the drinking water. And today, if you want to dig a well or a cesspit in London or many other places, you have to fill so many forms and get all these permits from all these bureaucracies, and it saves our lives. So, and with every technology and all these big inventions, it's never kind of a simple story, it's all bad, it's all good. The question is what we do with it.
What do we do with it, yeah.
And one final thought on AI, on bureaucracy. This is what we need to understand about AI. That when people hear about the dangers of AI, again, Hollywood, they think about the big robot rebellion.
Right.
The robots will rebel one day and come to kill us.
They're going to take over.
They'll take over. Terminator. And this is very unlikely to happen anytime soon. So people are complacent. The real danger is from the AI bureaucrats. Because we are still some distance away from the Terminator, but we are already...
But we both agree Terminator is going to happen.
At some point could.
I just want to make sure.
If we make the wrong decisions.
Right,
if we make the wrong decisions, yes. But the AIs are now becoming the bureaucrats in more and more places. You apply to a bank to get a loan, it's an AI deciding whether to give you a loan. You apply for a job, it's an AI. We heard earlier, social media, decisions about what news will reach the top of the news feed, it's an AI. It's not a human anymore.
Right.
And AIs are still very narrow intelligences. They can't yet organize the big robot rebellion.
Yet.
Right. But in a bureaucracy, you don't need a very kind of broad intelligence. You can have a very narrow intelligence that is good at only one thing and still have immense impact on the world, like with the algorithms that manage social media. And again, it can be good. I mean, AIs...
Depending what you do with them, right.
But this is where we have to be very, very careful. What kind of decisions these AIs are already making about our life?
Well, many people involved in AI are very concerned about it. And here's a question I wanted to ask you. Maybe it's predicting the future. I'm not sure. When you think of algorithms, to me, is there like a, I don't know, maybe a harmony or kind of a sameness between algorithms and organisms, you know, when you think about how they operate, you know, because an organism, like a simple-celled organism, there's an algorithm that governs that organism. You know what I mean? So if you think about an AI, if an algorithm is governing it, is that like an organism? Is that something that can then develop and evolve on its own without interference? And who knows where that could go? Should we be concerned about the growth it can do in its own? Because all other forms of technology requires intervention in order for advancement. Is this the one type that doesn't require intervention in order for it to get out of control?
Yeah, I think this is maybe the most important thing to know about AI is what you just said, that in contrast to every previous technology, it can make decisions and change and learn by itself.
By itself, it's learning.
You know, the printing press, we decided which books to print the Bible, print the witches.
It's very stupid.
But it can't decide anything. And it's also the atom bomb. But AI can make decisions and learn and change things by itself. And you know, now there is such hype around AI. It's not like the buzzword, especially in the investment world. If you want to sell people something, you say this is AI. Like this is AI watch, this is AI water, this is an AI carpet. Now invest in my AI carpet company. And the money starts flooding in. So people are becoming confused. What exactly is AI and how is AI different from all these other machines? Like I have a coffee machine at home, X Coffee. Is it an AI? And it's not. I mean, we have lots of automatic machines. If they only do what they were pre-programmed to do, they don't learn anything new, it's not AI. Like every morning I come to the machine, I press the espresso button, it makes an espresso, that's just an automatic machine. It becomes an AI if one morning, like as I approach the machine, before I press any button, the machine talks to me and tells me, good morning, I've been watching you for the last few weeks or months, and based on everything I've learned about you and your facial expression and the way you walk and whatever, I predict you would like an espresso. And I already took the liberty to make the espresso for you.
Wow.
That's an AI.
Right.
It learned something. And it's really an AI if it then the next day tells you, actually, I've invented a completely new drink. I call it Bespresso. You've never tried it before, but I predict you would like it better.
I'm scared where this is going. Yeah. This doesn't taste that good today, Mr. Coffee. What's going on? Just drink it. Just drink it. Yeah.
It's good for you.
Yeah, it's good for
It's
you.
good for
Just
you.
drink it. Yeah.
But the ability to invent new things. Like, so all the people who say that if you can predict how this technology will develop, what decisions it will make, it is not an AI.
Right. Our fantasy of AI, of course, my earliest one that I remember is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
You know, how the computer. Now, it seemed that Hal was making, well, we know what it is now in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like he was making a moral decision. He was making like, there's something moral at the center of this. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that. You know, it's almost a moral statement, you know. Is AI, does it have the ability to make moral judgments?
That's a very important and complex question. On the one hand, yes, it needs to make ethical judgments. Like to put a self-driving car on the road, you need to program some ethics into it. Because at least in certain situations, it will have to make an ethical decision. Like if some kid jumps on the road in front of the car,
Right.
and the only way to avoid hitting the kid is swerving to the side and endangering its own passenger, then the car actually needs to make an ethical decision. And you can't avoid it. The question is whether really a non-conscious entity can really understand ethics. And this is where I think that the biggest confusion about the AIs is that people tend to confuse intelligence and consciousness. AIs are highly intelligent, at least in a narrow field. They can beat us in chess. They will soon be able to drive cars better. They can invent medicines that we can't think of. This is intelligence. But it doesn't mean that they are conscious. It doesn't mean that they have feelings. Now, intelligence is the ability to pursue goals and solve problems on the way to the goal. Like you give the car the goal of getting from here to San Francisco, and the car solves problems on the way there. This is intelligence.
Right.
Consciousness is the ability to feel things, pain, pleasure, love, hate. Now, in humans, and also in other animals, in dogs and pigs and so forth, intelligence and consciousness go together. We actually solve problems using feelings. Evolution equipped us with feelings, not as something on the side. This is the main way we solve problems. We make decisions in life based on feelings. So in humans, intelligence and consciousness are really, they go together. And this confuses us. As computers become more and more intelligent, people tend to assume that they necessarily also become conscious, that they start feeling things. Now, and we don't know. At the present moment, we don't have any evidence that computers feel anything. And it could be that even if computers become far more intelligent than us in everything, they still won't feel anything. Like when a computer defeats me at chess, the computer is not happy. It's not joyful. During the game, it doesn't feel anxiety or it doesn't feel anything. If you think about it like, like airplanes and birds. So birds evolved for millions of years to fly using feathers. Then airplanes came along, and within 100 years, they now fly much faster and further and higher than birds, but in a completely different way. They are not on the way to developing feathers. Wait, next year they'll develop feathers. They don't. They are just, you can think about it like two evolutionary processes that never meet. They run in parallel. You have birds, you have airplanes, they are moving along different trajectories. And now airplanes, again, they fly much faster than birds. They don't have feathers. Could be the same with humans and computers and consciousness. That, yes, we, over millions of years, developed intelligence with consciousness. And now the computers are going much faster than us, developing intelligence without any consciousness. And again, I'm not sure. It could be that they will also develop consciousness at some point.
Well, could you make the argument that consciousness, what really maybe distinguishes it, I'm not an expert on this, I'm just saying that maybe the ability to reflect. To me, like, animals can feel pain, certainly that kind of stuff. Animals can show affection, you come home, your dog's like running at you, that type of thing. But I don't think my dog reflects on why I leave, Like, I don't think it's like, why did he go? I don't know. It's like, this is so weird. He does this every morning. It's like, he just leaves, Like, and I wonder if AI, if it feels, if AI figures out that the only way it can really keep getting better is to have feelings. Like, that's what I'm getting at. Like, will it figure out a way? Because here's the thing. I believe that some of the psychology, like behind getting rid of like bad habits and that kind of thing, they say if you just start saying something, your body just starts believing it, Like, I wonder if that's a thing computers can do. If it starts saying it has feelings, like what if it learns how to be jealous first, Like, jealousy is a pretty easy thing for computers, it seems. I don't know, I'm putting out these scenarios because I'm
spend more time with your
about
smartphone than with the,
Yeah, maybe jealousy is the first thing that it gets, or anger or whatever, as a way in.
I mean, it can definitely mimic it.
Right.
I mean, again, this is a very big danger
And
today
the
in
act
the world.
of doing that, I'm saying it believes that, like, in other words, it's like, is anger really real, right?
Anger is real.
Is it though? Like, what is it exactly? Like,
It is and this goes back to subjective, objective.
Exactly.
I mean, anger is a subjective reality.
right.
I mean, I don't.
Real for the person.
It's real for the person.
Right.
Nobody else can be sure. I can act very angrily, but you
Right.
can never tell whether I'm really angry inside.
Exactly.
And with AI, it will be the same.
That's my point.
Yeah. And again, this part of the problem is there are very big financial and business incentives to create AIs that mimic feelings and that can get us to be emotionally attached to them. And the AI doesn't really need to have feelings to do that. It can become excellent in faking emotions and faking intimacy, even if it's still completely non-conscious, still feels nothing. And we will not be able to tell.
This is like why sex robots are like taken off in some parts of the world, and I'm guessing that they mimic feelings and that sort of thing, or they'll be able to. Like, that's where that's going.
Yeah, from pornography in the sex industry all the way to politics, there are strong incentives to create AIs that can make people emotionally attached to them by faking feelings. Like, if you want to convince a person of something, to buy a product, to vote for a politician. So the most, like the super weapon of convincing people is intimacy. Like, previously we had big battles for attention. Like what we talked about earlier, how you grab people's attention and cause them to talk about immigration or about abortion. This is attention. But what really changes people's minds, if somebody they have an intimate relationship with, could be a spouse, could be a good friend, could be a family member, in a kind of intimate setting, subtly causes them to change their mind. Like, there are many things that if I hear somebody on television say, I will just dismiss it. But if a very good friend who knows me well knows how to tell me, I will say, yeah, maybe there is something to it. So, like, the nuclear weapons of persuasion is intimacy. Previously in history, there was no way to mass produce intimacy. A dictator like a Hitler or a Stalin, he could force everybody to give him their attention. Like, you could force every family in the Soviet Union to listen to a radio broadcast by Stalin.
Right.
You got their attention. But this is not intimacy. There was no way to mass produce intimacy. Now with AI, it's the first time in history that you can mass produce intimacy. And what will this do? You know, imagine that the world is flooded by millions and even billions of these highly intelligent non-human agents that are very good at faking intimacy with us.
That's amazing. You know, it's funny that you said that can change your mind. I think we have a couple of questions coming up, but I wanted to ask this because we were talking a little bit about what's happening in the Middle East and how it seems like, you know, we all know, to me it seems almost like a fatalistic endeavor to try to solve it because it's been going on for so long and the information. But I was thinking about information and your book with that, and how much does that play a pernicious role in what's going on? And as an example, and I'm not, you know, ascribing anything to either side, but I was thinking about this the other day where the word terrorist, you know, as a piece of information, that piece of information allows someone to be killed like without due process. You know, once that information is tagged, you know, that is very powerful use of a word.
Yeah, and this goes back generations. I mean, throughout the 20th century, lots of governments, again, including the Soviet government, like the word terrorist was popularized to a large extent by the Soviets, who kind of, anybody who was against the regime, anybody who was against the revolution was also a terrorist. You know, the same way you have inflation with money, that you print so many dollars that they lose their value.
Right.
It happens with words.
Yeah.
The first time you use it, it shocks people.
Yeah.
The second time, it shocks them a little less. And when everything, you know, like happened also with the word fascist, that it used to be this kind of the ultimate swear word, was after the Second World War, calling somebody a fascist or a Nazi. This was like people
The
were,
worst thing, right.
And now it's like, it's so common that it has no impact at all. And the word is completely, its value was inflated until it was completely empty. And yeah.
And do you think there's been too much bad information on both sides in that region where there has to be, and I'm oversimplifying this, so I apologize for that, but it seems like you almost need a period of years where information can change between groups. You know?
The war ultimately, like most conflicts in the world, are not, we talked earlier about objective, intersubjective, subjective. There are almost no wars in the world which are about objective problems.
Yes, right.
Almost all the problems that cause war are intersubjective. They are the result of fictional stories. So again, if I look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, lots of people think, oh, it's about land.
Right.
And it's about food. But it's not. Even though it's a crowded place, the land between the Mediterranean and the Jordan River, there is actually enough land to build houses and schools and hospitals for everyone. There is not an objective lack of food, like there is tiny island, there is just not enough space there, you have to go to the sea. There is enough space. Also, there is definitely no lack of food. There is enough food for everybody that nobody should be hungry. So why do people fight? They fight about the stories that they have, and this is both sides, they have this fantasy, this mythology in their mind that God gave this whole place only to us, and you shouldn't exist here. And ultimately, I think, and again, this goes to most wars. You have kind of a conflict between the mind and reality. That there is something in reality which is really there that the mind just can't accept, cannot contain. Like you say, no, it doesn't exist, or it shouldn't exist. And war is when the mind tries to disappear from reality, something that it finds hard to accept.
Right.
So again, on both sides. Like you talk with Israelis, and some of them will tell you with complete seriousness and honesty, but there is no Palestinian people. They will tell you with a straight face, completely serious, there is no Palestinian people, they don't exist. Or they would tell you they don't have a right to exist here. They should go to Egypt, to Jordan, to somewhere else. This is ours, they have no right to exist here. And then you talk with Palestinians, they tell you the same thing. Like with a completely straight face, completely serious, they will tell you, what do Jews have to do with the Jerusalem? Like 3,000 years of Jewish history? No. These people, they don't exist, or they shouldn't exist here. They have no right to be here. And again, it's on both sides. You see this simple denial of existence or the right to exist. And I think the first step towards any chance of peace is starting with just the acknowledgement of reality. That there are 7 million, more than 7 million Palestinians born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And you have more than 7 million Jews. The vast majority of them also were born in this place. They have nowhere else to go. They have a right to exist here. And now let's sit and talk about where the borders will be and what will be the security arrangement and how to divide the resources. But the first step is this simple acknowledgement of reality. These other people, they also exist. They also have a right to exist. And unfortunately, a lot of minds just block it. No, 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 we don't see. We don't see half of reality.
Well, as you said in your book and everything too, stories are just one of the most powerful things for humans. You know, and that's why another reason why books work, because for some reason we latch onto stories. Stories stick with us longer than anything. The stories you learn as a child stick with you the longest. You know, you be careful what you say to children, right? You know, really, that's why you should never, like they say, don't be so negative to kids, and because they believe the things you tell them. They really do. You know, even offhand comments.
Yeah, the fairy tales and the stories we hear as kids.
Very powerful.
Afterwards shape our vision of the world.
Very powerful. Yeah. Well, let's go to some questions.
Dana writes, the science fiction film Forbidden Planet tells the story of the Krell, a civilization that made a giant leap forward in technology, but they couldn't control the technology and were ultimately destroyed by it. Are we, thanks to AI, at the risk of becoming the Krell ourselves?
Forbidden Planet, is that what they mentioned? Yeah. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, are we at risk of going down that way? Is it,
I mean, the risk is there.
Nature to destroy ourselves?
No, and it should be very clear. Again, this goes back to these fairy tales. And you have a lot of fairy tales and mythologies and theologies that tell us there is something wrong with us. There is something evil in us. And we create things that then inevitably destroy us. And this is a very dangerous message because it causes people to despair, or it causes people to expect some outside help. Humans are evil, so we need some superhuman entity to come and save us. And then you don't take responsibility. Right. So I don't think the problem is in human nature. The problem is in our information. Again, if you give good people bad information, they make bad decisions and self-destructive decisions. Now, with technologies like AI, the danger is definitely there. This is the most powerful technology we've ever invented. It's more powerful than nuclear weapons, and because it can invent new stuff. An atom bomb could not invent the hydrogen bomb. But AI can invent the next generation of AIs and all kinds of weapons and whatever. But it's not deterministic. It's not like there is a script somewhere in the Hollywood above the clouds, somebody already written the script for the movie that we are just playing here. No, it's in our hands. We are the screenwriters, we are the directors. If we make the right decisions in the coming years, we can avoid the worst outcomes. And AI has enormous positive potential. This is why people develop it.
Right.
They are, it can provide the best healthcare in the world. It can help us deal with climate change. There is so much positive potential. If we can only avoid the worst case scenarios, this can really be a force for good.
I feel if AI just focused on cancer, I mean, the way that it self-learns, I would imagine, I could honestly see something like that being cracked.
Absolutely.
With AI working on it. That would be amazing.
Carl asks, the titans of industry behind AI are all profit-driven. So how can they possibly be trusted to self-regulate? So it seems to me there needs to be a party independent of those invested in the financial gain from AI to oversee checks and balances, or at least ask questions. Yet the technology is so complicated, how can that entity, even if it's the big government, actually understand the true impact? His own follow-up is, and if it is government, how can we be assured that all governments will agree to the same terms?
So, I mean, you can't trust the companies to just self-regulate. And many of the people who lead them They are not evil people. They are aware of the dangers. They are, to some extent, very afraid of what they are doing, but they cannot regulate themselves. They are locked into this kind of arms race with the other companies and with the people on the other side of the ocean. So you need governments and you need the public to intervene, but then the question becomes, but we first have to understand the problem. How do you do that? So I think the first step is to establish an institution, an organization, which doesn't belong to a particular company or government. And it's not a regulatory institution. It's just observing and informing the public around the world what is actually happening. Now, for this to function, you need this institution, organization, first to be staffed with some of the best human talent in the world, and to have the budget, both to pay the human talent and also to have the most advanced technology, the toys to play with. At present, you know, the best talent in the world is immediately snatched by the big corporations that can pay salaries far beyond anything the academia or the government can. And it's not just money. I mean, many of these people are just fascinated by the technology, and they want to play with the latest toys. And the latest toys are in Google or in OpenAI or in Baidu or Tencent, so this is where they go. So to have a serious chance of really informing the public, and not just in the US, I mean, there is an even bigger problem elsewhere around the world, because AI will have different impact on different countries. The US is likely to become far more wealthy and powerful because of AI, whereas other countries could completely collapse. Their economy could completely collapse. So how do you inform everybody? And we need this kind of international organization, and we can have an agreement between governments to finance this kind of, again, it's not a regulatory institution. It's even before that. It's just finding out what is happening and informing the public so we can start having a real conversation about it. It's not a pipe dream, largely because everybody around the world is concerned about it. At least there are certain problems. You know, there are certain issues that you can never get the Americans and Chinese to agree or to trust each other. But there are problems which are common to both sides. For instance, the control problem. One of the biggest problems with AI, you create this super intelligent agent. How do you keep it under your control? Now, this is a problem for the Chinese and the Americans, for the Iranians and the Israelis. Nobody wants an out-of-control AI. It's not good for anybody. So this is something that you can have more cooperation on. And theoretically, I don't know, if Chinese scientists find they have a theoretical breakthrough or a practical breakthrough, how do you solve the control problem? They have a deep interest in sharing it with the Americans and vice versa. So we can start by looking for the areas of common interest and working on them and hopefully building enough trust there that you can then expand it to the more complicated areas.
I think we should be more concerned about Chinese using AI rather than AI using the Chinese. Right? I mean, that to me seems like a bigger, bigger concern.
Again, but everybody is afraid of the potential of, getting out of control.
Right, but out of control government, let's say, using AI in the wrong
This is also extremely dangerous.
More of a concern.
But on this, you'll have a much bigger difficulty agreeing.
Exactly. Right.
So I'm saying, okay, let's start with the easier problem.
Right.
And build from there. And yes, I mean, if you want to have an agreement about limiting the production, let's say, of autonomous weapon systems, the Terminator, the killer robots, this is going to be much, much more difficult because each government will suspect the other for good reasons. That, okay, they signed the agreement, but how do we know they are not doing it in some secret laboratory?
Trust and verify.
What changes do you think are necessary in our education system to better prepare future generations for an uncertain world? And do you think AI has a role in that?
Does AI have a role in our education system to change the world?
AI can be very helpful in the education system in many ways, at least, again, to teach specific issues. If today you have, I don't know, a classroom with 30 or 40 kids in it, with different abilities, different ways of learning, different understandings, and a single teacher needs to teach the same thing to all the 30 kids, and she or he, they don't know each kid personally, and they can't teach, I mean, they can only say one thing at any moment. So it's difficult to, if one kid thinks mostly visually, and another kid is more of a word person, what do you do? Now, AIs can help solve it because you can just, each kid can have an AI tutor that gets to know that particular child and kind of tailor the pace and the type of explanations to that particular child.
Right.
However, if the education system goes too far in that direction, it loses maybe the most important thing in education, which is how the social interaction. We already have too much loneliness and too much distrust in society. So maybe the most important thing that children learn in school is not during class, it's during break time, of how do you interact with the other kids, how do you learn to trust people. And this is something we saw with COVID, for instance, that with all this social isolation and learning from home, there were some, far from ideal, but at least some solutions for class. But there was no solution for the break time.
Right.
And this is where we feel the greatest pain of the aftershocks of the epidemics, of the epidemic. It's in the mental health, in the social health, that people who are isolated, not just kids, also adults, for weeks and months, and okay, they could still study math, but they lost the ability to play with the other kids in the school. So we have to be very, very careful when we introduce AI into the education system to remember that social intelligence and emotional intelligence is perhaps now more important than ever, because the only thing we know about the 21st century is there is going to be very rapid changes in everything.
Right.
So if you think, okay, I must focus on teaching kids how to code computers because this is what they'll do in 20 years, nobody has any idea. Maybe in 20 years, AI codes computers so well, you don't need any human coders. So all this narrow investment went to nothing. What they will definitely need is emotional intelligence, how to deal with an extremely rapid change in society.
Also, AI could be involved in individual curriculum for children. My son is on the spectrum. He has Asperger's. And one thing I learned, when you have a child in that situation is that every child learns differently, but it's just more apparent when you have a child that's on the spectrum. And if there's an ability for different types of curriculum within the same classroom where kids can have the social interaction, but with AI, you have really the ability to almost tailor curriculum to individuals almost.
Yeah.
Like everybody doesn't have to learn the same way.
Exactly.
Right, but they can be in the same,
They can be in the same space.
Right.
You have an hour that you learn from the AI,
Right.
Mathematics, and different kids learn different things, and then the hour is over and they all play together.
It could be interesting, who knows,
Clara asks, when does information become knowledge? And how do we account for translation and interpretation in sharing information or knowledge?
When does information become knowledge? Really good question. Yeah.
So and most information is not the truth. Information is very different from knowledge. And you need to work hard to process the information. Again, most information is junk. It's like you have a huge pile of junk and you're looking for the nuggets of truth, of the precious knowledge in that junk heap. And ultimately, the only answer is institutions. I know that institutions are not popular, that people, today we have a kind of wave of distrust in institutions. But humans have, this is the answer we always come back to. Like I talked earlier about the printing press, that it did not lead to the scientific revolution. What did lead to the scientific revolution was the very slow and complex creation of scientific institutions, like academic research centers, like academic publishers, that they developed the skill to tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. what evidence I can believe, and what is suspect. And then eventually it was the academic publishers, when they got a book or an article about witch hunting, they say, the evidence is not convincing. I know this will sell, but I'm not publishing this because I have a commitment to the truth and to knowledge. And then they got this kind of very boring treatise with mathematical equations about the movement of the planets or whatever, and they say, yes, this is the truth, we'll publish this. And this was the foundation of the scientific revolution, not the printing press. The printing press was helpful, of course, but it was only when you have these institutions. And today, one of the problems that, one of the biggest problems in societies all over the world is distrust in institutions, which is fed by a very cynical view of humanity, which is prevalent on both the right and the left. You hear from people on both the right and the left that you cannot trust institutions because they are all conspiracies, cabals to gain power.
Right.
There is this view that like humans are these power-crazy demons, that they only want power, and whether it's newspapers or universities or courts or any other institution, this is just some elitist conspiracy to gain power. And whenever they tell you something, you should ask whose privileges are being served, whose interests are being served by this. And this suspicion, it destroys trust in all institutions. And when all trust is gone, the only thing that still keeps going or could hold society together is a dictatorship. Because dictatorship doesn't need trustworthy institutions. Dictatorships works on terror. Now, the important thing to remember is that it's just not true that all humans just want power. The only thing they want is power, that all human interactions are power struggles. Yes, humans want power, but this is just one aspect of human beings. They also want the truth. There is a deep yearning for truth in humans. If you go really deep, it's because if you don't know the truth about yourself, your life, you can never be happy. Because you don't know what are the true sources of your misery. And then you spend your life trying to solve the wrong problems. So humans have a real deep yearning for the truth. And this is true of even powerful people, even editors of newspapers, even scientists, even judges, even politicians. Yes, they are sometimes corrupt, and this is why we have all these mechanisms to checks and balances. But we should start with a more charitable and generous view of humans, that there is a real desire for truth in these apes, in these beings. And one last thing, how do you get to knowledge? So for instance, I'm a historian, and I spent 10 years in university basically learning how to sift through the kind of heap of information and tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. Like some people think, historians, what they learn is these long lists of names of kings and battles. No, they don't. What historians go to university and they learn for years and years is how do I tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information? How do I know what happened in the 15th century during the print revolution in Europe? You need to learn the languages. You need to learn Latin and Greek and kind of 16th century German and English, which was different from English today.
Right.
You need to learn how to write handwriting from 500 years ago. And of course, you need to learn the difference. Just the fact that I found a book from the 15th century that said that witches stole penises from men. Is this true? Does it mean that in the 15th century there were really witches that stole? No, just because there is a paper from the 15th century that says it doesn't mean it's true. Now, how do you know? This is what you learn for 10 years. And this is also true of newspaper editors. You want to be a newspaper editor, you usually learn. You go to journalism school, and then you start as a simple journalist, and you slowly make your way up the ladder. And now, unfortunately, again, we have people who have no background in this, And they are managing the largest media companies in the world.
Right.
And when you tell them, you should not advance all these conspiracy theories and fake news, they honestly tell you, but how can I tell the difference? How can I know if it's true or not? Well, if you can't tell the difference, you're in the wrong business.
Doris says, in the United States, the First Amendment technically blocks the censorship of misinformation. John Kerry has suggested or floated a proposal about an idea of something called the Ministry of Truth.
It's not the business of the government is already the most powerful force in society. Mm-hmm. Making it also in charge of the truth is a very, very dangerous proposition. Yeah. This is checks and balances. You need the whole idea of, in dictatorship, all the power is concentrated in one place. This is dictatorship, one person dictates everything, this one person dictates also what is the truth. Mm-hmm. In a democracy, the whole idea is a conversation between many people, institutions, organizations. And the government is the most powerful institution of all, so it should definitely not also be in charge of the truth. This is why we should have free press, and we should have academic freedom, and you should have independent courts, that each of these institutions is in charge of finding out the truth about different aspects of reality. Like, was the crime committed? So judges are the experts on finding the truth about that. The latest news from yesterday, this is the job of newspapers. What happened 500 years ago? This is the job of historians and archaeologists and so forth. And of course, again, there are problems in all these institutions because they are made of humans. And this is why you have many institutions. If you have corruption in the courts, so the media can publish it and can raise a public outcry. If there is racism in the newspaper business, so this is the job of sociologists or anthropologists to do research and show, look, there is a racist bias in the media. If there is a problem in academia, so again, you can go to the courts. And what happens if all of them are corrupt? Well, nothing is perfect. People don't know how to build a perfect society.
Right.
We have to start with the assumption that everything is fallible. We do our best. Mm-hmm. This is, again, why we have these multiple institutions and checks and balances. If all the power is concentrated in one place, it's very easy to corrupt it.
Yep.
If it's spread between many institutions, we have a fighting chance, let's say.
Yes. Well, I think we've learned some valuable things today. Number one, what do witches do in their spare time? And number two, any, journalist of a paper worth their salt's going to end up being a dictator. But thank you so much for joining us. Yuval Harari, guys.
Thank you.